I think that's so well known that a lot of Palestinians look at Seeds of Peace as being too normalizing, that we are fostering normal relationships between Palestinians and Israelis at the wrong time, before they have accomplished having a state of their own. So that it's so recognized that way. We do have a lot of play, but we got to remember that the people we're serving are 14, 15, 16 years old, and they play around a lot. I would say that they play around. But when you have a population like that, male and female, it's a really good idea to have a very structured day. And they have a very structured day in terms of all the activities that they do. And what we try to do is make opportunities for them to get out of their comfort zone and to take a risk. So that's not the same as play, but it's experimentation. And we don't ask them to do something that's impossible or even seems impossible for them. But it is hard. For example, when they're asked to go up high on the ropes course, it's hard. It's 35 feet in the air, and most people don't go up that high and walk across a tightrope naturally. Okay, so that is hard, but we build up to it. The thing that we play with is humor. Every day we meet as a group of 200 young people at a certain spot called Lineup in front of the lake, and we make announcements there about what we're going to do in the next couple of hours. But also, that's a good time for lots of humor. And between humor and music, there is so much room for creativity. And the counselors we have are your age. They're college students. And, they still have fun. And I often say you don't have to be crazy to be a counselor at our camp, but it's a big help if you are. Because these are children who, some of them haven't had a childhood. They haven't had Elmo. And who's cuter than Elmo, right? But they haven't had Elmo. And they have had very serious childhoods. And their parents have not been able to protect them. That's a very serious difference. Normally, you would expect that your parents would be able to protect you when you're a child. Now they can't, but when you were a young one, you expected your parents and your teachers to protect you. These young people come from environments where that is not necessarily the case, and often has proven that it's not. And so that's that's more scary kind of thing. And you can see when they come to camp, the ones who have been traumatized, in general, don't have any expression at all on their face. They come and they are like part of the scenery. And we have about 25 of them out of 200 who come back for the second time. And I always ask that group, please, when you see young people like that, where they're the kind you don't see at all, usually. They're the kind of kids that are just part of the group, but because they don't react and they don't have ideas of their own, and they're not smiling and they're not making noises, you go right past them. But please, pick them out and go up to them and help them feel like somebody cares about them. So we do we do that kind of stuff. The reason we've chosen this age to work with is because we have observed, and I don't know if it's true for everybody, but that this is an age when young people are willing to trust their own experience. And what we want them to experience is what it would be like if they could live together in peace with their enemies. And their enemies are existential enemies. They're not just rivals. They're real enemies. So it's a huge hurdle that they have to get over. And having fun and playing around in a controlled way is how it is helped to happen.
Can you talk a little about this idea that play is normal for the population? Could you maybe talk specifically too about the population?
Yeah, you can see the pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got 3 pictures just to, I think pictures say more than words. And these are pictures from some of the work that we've been doing in Ecuador. This is actually in Ecuador, and this is a recent graduate of Northeastern, Josh Avery. He's a physical therapy student, and we are in the infant house at the Forest Children Orphanage, and our students just kind of dive right in and play with the kids. And what I can say about the room that we're in is that we actually bought the flooring for, this was a room, it was a cement floor where toddlers were on and they were falling and injuring themselves, and so our students fundraised to bring flooring, to purchase flooring, then we brought it down the next year. But if you can look at talk about play and imitation, I mean, we've got Josh in the pit and we've got Moises next to him, and they've almost got the same expression. And so anytime there was a male student there, the male children just glommed on because they were looking for some role models. But they had a lot of interaction through play, and this is normal play for these kids in the ball pit here. So can you go to the next slide? I think the more dramatic experiences were in China. And this isn't like the best slide that I have, but this is my colleague Annie Charette, and that's another student of mine, Lily, who's now my TA who comes to Ecuador with me. She's a recent NU graduate as well. But we brought a parachute down, and we're working with kids that have been severely burned, never smile, horribly traumatized, for various reasons. Having a parachute where you can interact with one another, the parents can get involved, the kids are happy and enjoying themselves, and we're on the burn and plastics unit in the Air Force General Hospital in Beijing, and that's where this is. So another example. And then third example is that we actually took music therapy, we took instruments that we brought down and went outside the hospital in Beijing, and we brought the kids out of the hospital. They were engaged with the normal population in Beijing, but again, we were using instruments to have them engage, feel good about themselves, be expressive, be creative, and they were also in a group. Their parents are with them, we were with them, and I don't know if that's enough to say, but I think that's again, trying to be therapeutic in involving them and interaction among themselves, involving their parents, because in this particular culture, because the Chinese are paying for everything, they didn't really view play as therapeutic. And so we were trying to look at how we can make play therapeutic even for a child that may be missing a limb. We used Velcro to Velcro shakers, little egg shakers on, or Velcro balls so we could play catch. And I had one child in particular playing catch with his mother. So it was a normal child-parent interaction. And this particular child had gotten locked in a burning vehicle, so his parents got out and he didn't get out. So it's a lot of guilt with the parents related to what had happened to their particular child. And with the one-child policy in China, this is their child. So, it's complicated. It gets culturally very complicated. And kids without parents, it's almost a little bit freer because you're not dealing with parents, but you are still dealing with children that have a desire to be with adults that give them undivided attention.
Well, and seeing these pictures, I couldn't bring pictures because of confidentiality rules, but they're the same pictures. They're just different cultures and different faces. But it strikes me that I could have brought pictures of kids playing with parachutes, kids playing drums, and play is play. I think it's a sort of an international language. I'm not an expert on that that aspect of it, but I think play is the same worldwide. I think tag is tag, and you must see it everywhere, right? So that's speaking to normalcy. what could be more normal and more sort of cross-cultural than play. So thinking about what I think you asked about identity, and also some of what you said resonated, how do you structure for kids? Because the kids that we work with, sometimes finding the balance between the right amount of structure so that it's going to work and the play isn't going to turn into a fiasco, and enough freedom is a complicated thing, and new staff really struggle with that a lot, and even old staff like me struggle with that when I work with the kids. But how to sort of have the right amount of control, and I'm saying control in a positive way, that leads bit by bit to empowering the kid to have their own identity and have their own ability to be themselves, is a complicated task, and it's a real art form, I think, and in terms of working with kids, and I assume lots of you are going to want to work with kids. That takes time and takes a lot of skill to have happen. And I think, with the kids I work with, it's a little bit more complicated because they need that oversight. There's a lot that can go wrong because of their histories without careful oversight and careful guidance. We tend to, you were talking about kids and that sort of withdrawing into themselves a little bit. We tend to have kids that, think about fight, flight, and fool. We have the fighters more where I work, and so it's sort of they're right in your face, and it's pretty clear that what you're working with. And one of the things that I think about a lot is this idea of resiliency when you can consider self-identity. What is it that makes one kid have a horrible time while his or her brother actually flourishes? And we see that a lot in our kids. And we're more and more working on the idea of every kid needs to belong, has to have a sense of belonging, sort of a four-part kind of schema. Every kid needs to belong to a group, belong to whatever it is, belong to a religion, a culture, have a sense of belonging. Every kid needs a sense of mastery and needs to feel like they can achieve in school as the way we do it in America a lot of the time, but in all sorts of ways. So mastery on the sports field, mastery in the broadest sense. Everybody needs a sense of their individuality, to make them feel like they are special in some way. And every kid needs to develop a sense of generosity and giving. And what you were saying struck me as there's so many connections. And so we sort of think about that in our work. Do a lot of experiential education. You talked about the ropes course, the same kinds of things. So we use Project Adventure as a local organization that really fosters experiential education, and that idea of what's the right amount of disequilibrium that you want to put the kids into. If we just make everything easy for the kids all the time, then there's no learning. If we push them over the edge and make them panic when they're 35 feet up, then that might not work. But finding that right balance between not enough expectations and expectations that are too high is also a skill set.
For Rachel and Regina, play. We think of play as being so integral for school-age children, specifically for very young children. But we're also sort of, again, we have this American race for academic success, right? We all need to be in the top 1% kind of drive. Are you feeling pressure both in the public schools and in the preschool arena to cut back on play, to think more about the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s? And what's the role of play now in the lives of very young children and adults?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because something that Peace Through Play is working on now is this balance in after-school programs between helping the children with their homework and also having time to play. And we're coming into these after-school settings where children have been sitting in their school for all day, paying attention, focusing, trying to, and we're coming in and automatically being directed to homework help because that's the first priority, which is really tough for a lot of the kids that we work with, just being able to still have that focus. So it's finding the balance between the academic and then the social emotional part, which is what Peace Through Play is so focused on. And what I think is really important, and things that can come up while you're helping a kid with homework, can be social emotional learning too. But it's the way that once they're done with their homework, we're able to play with them, and that's how I see the kids really processing and being able to build those skills that most people might not think of necessarily as academic, but that actually contribute to academic success. So the way that they're able to play and have that freedom, and like we've said, it's so natural, that's what they want to do, is just kind of express themselves. But at the same time, I believe in more of a focus on that social emotional learning throughout school and also in after school, because that is what prepares kids to be able to have this academic success. It's being able to be in touch with their social skills, with their emotional skills, and having that foundation so that they can focus on school, so that they're not worried about their own emotional problem, what they're going through, or the way that they're interacting with peers, because that part is so important within the school and after school too. So I also wanted to comment on the structure piece of it, which ties in here, in that Peace Through Play is so focused on teaching nonviolent conflict resolution. And one way that we could do that is just stand up in front of the classroom and talk to them about what is peace, what is a peacemaker. We could do a whole lesson and write on the chalkboard, but the way that we see as more effective is through play, whether that be through certain peace games that we've developed or just their natural play, and playing with them as role models, and then knowing when to intervene and to make sure that everyone's having that equal chance to develop their identity and everyone's on that equal level so that they have those social and emotional skills. So.
Well, I think it is a very interesting question. And when I said I was lucky to be at Northeastern, I wasn't kidding. Because there's a real push down now that kindergarten is first grade, and that makes preschool kindergarten, right? And so that what a lot of politicians and business people who want to be in charge of education now are saying is that preschoolers need to sit on the rug for 45 minutes and do math. Which of course we all know is ridiculous, because what do 3, 4, and 5s do? They play. And what do they learn through play? Everything. And I'm not talking random play, running around the playground, chasing each other, or things like that. We're talking about productive play, where they're using materials, and even a game of chase. It's teaching them things like, you're it and then I'm it. That's give and take. That's our social conversation. That's how we act towards each other. So even something as simple as a chase game can be an extremely important type of play for children. So here at Northeastern, I'm allowed to do what we think is correct for children, which is let them play. And I think the most exciting thing about the center is that because we are a benefit for Northeastern faculty and staff, we have an incredibly diverse population. So we have children this year who come from Turkey and China and Bulgaria and Hungary, through Israel. Through the years, we've had children literally from all over the world who don't come speaking English, but they have that innate language of play. That's how they interact and that's how they learn from each other. So to squash that, I think we're doing children a great disservice. Because as someone said, and I can't remember who, it's the opposite of play is not work, it's depression. So if we don't let children play, we're seeing anxiety and unhappiness, and that's something that in our children we do not want to see. And I was extremely interested in the idea of risk, because I think one of the reasons that we are suppressing play is because in the United States, we don't want risk takers really. We want everything to be organized. We want to be in control. We want to be in control of our children. They lead very structured lives. But it's through risk that children learn. And I could go on and on about what those things are that they learn, but part of that is identity, and that they will be okay, that they have strong and healthy bodies. If they fall, they can get up and they'll be all right. That you take a risk and it's exciting, and that builds their confidence. So I think that even for young children, the risk-taking is a very important thing. We encourage that.